Fantastic article in Think Progress and Bloomberg about how the rich are, quote, literally rich beyond measure. They say, quote, we already know that the top 1% of income earners are getting more and more money while things stall at the bottom, but even so, the sheer amount we think they have is probably an undercount because it's so hard to measure. They continue, the wealth of the most well-off people is undercounted because they hide it in tax shelters, keep it in foundations and holding companies, and don't respond to questionnaires. Economist Gabriel Zuckman had initially estimated that the top 0.1% who have at least $20 million in net wealth held 21.5% of all wealth in the United States in 2012, but after estimating what is hidden in offshore tax havens, the number is more likely 23.5%. Stop and think about that, man. They're saying the top 0.1% of income earners in the U.S., 23.5% of the wealth is what they hold. Woo! That's a lot, man. That's a lot. Now, are you ready for this? According to a Bloomberg data analysis, here are the percentages that the top 1% owns in different countries across the world. So for everybody listening live on the radio right now, the chart says, how rich are the top 1% really? The wealth held by the top 1% of households is probably underestimated, according to an ECB paper that offers an adjusted estimate relying partly on Forbes billionaires' data. So, in the USA, the adjusted estimate for how much the rich actually have, they have 37% of the wealth. 37%. That's stunningly high. In Austria, they have 36% for their country, of course. In Germany, 33%. In Portugal, 25%. Italy, 20%. France, 19%. The Netherlands, 17%. Belgium, 17%. Spain, 15%. And Finland, 13%. Now, keeping these numbers in mind, let me tell you a little story about this thing called the Great Depression. Now, during the Great Depression, or I should say right before the Great Depression and right before the stock market crash in the late 1920s, the top 1% had about 24% of the nation's wealth, okay? And that is disproportionately high because everybody else was basically fighting for the crumbs and they didn't have anything, and eventually the jig was up and the market crashed. Of course, deregulation played into it and other things played into it, but the massive disparity in income was one of the biggest factors, okay? Now, post the Great Depression, when FDR came in and did the New Deal, and then we had World War II, and then we were the only superpower left standing, during the time period that was called the Golden Age of Economic Expansion in the United States, which was basically late 1940s till about the 1970s, okay, during that time period, the top 1% only had between 8% and 12% of the nation's wealth. That's it. And the money was evenly distributed, or more evenly distributed, I should say, amongst everybody else. Okay, so when things are more equal, we didn't have a banking collapse, we didn't have any major recessions, we didn't have any major problems. It was the golden age of economic expansion in America, and it went on for a very long time. A few things went into that. The New Deal, better regulations, and of course the better distribution of income, which came about through unionization and came about through labor protection laws, etc., etc. Okay, better tax policy. Now, before the Great Recession in 2008, guess what happened? That number that the top 1%, the wealth that the top 1% had compared to everybody else, it went right back to 24%. So the income disparity before the Great Recession was the same as before the Great Depression. That's scary because we're not learning the lessons of history. Fast forward to today. Now what's the disparity? 37%. What the fuck? Now, I guess to be fair, and I don't know if this really, tampers the point I'm going to make at all, but I guess you subtract 3% because they say that after adjusting for all the offshore tax havens and all that stuff. Then it goes up to 37%, but still, what are we looking at? 37, 36, 35, 34. So 34%. The top 1% has 34% of the nation's income. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I like to call unsustainable.